also have headphones that are quite, yeah, do I need to put headphones on? Like, earphones? Or is there no, like, echo? Oh, like, no, it's fine for me at the moment. I was just asking if, like, there's echo and stuff, and, like, you know. Oh, hey, what's up? Oh, that's really weird. Okay, I'm gonna turn it off then. That would be funny. I want to watch the thing after.
We're live! Oh, now I can hear you.
I need to turn my mic back on. Hey, what's up?
Hey.
Hear me now?
Hey, what's up? Alright, so, guys, welcome to the Shipcast. Essentially, this is the first episode. It's the pilot episode of the Shipcast. I'm super excited. We have our very first guest, Bully Goosh here. Ethan, on his actual name, you know. And essentially, we're just gonna be talking about indie maker stuff. The Shipcast, the concept of the Shipcast is just to bring successful founders in and let's just talk, have a nice casual conversation about indie maker culture, how they became successful, what they've done, what others can learn from them, and just generally have a nice chill conversation. So Ethan, go ahead, introduce yourself, give people, give the audience who may or may not know, even though probably most know who you are, tell them about you, your products, what you've made. Just go ahead.
Okay, so hey, I'm Ethan. I'm 15 years old, and I'm from Sydney in Australia. And I think I started, okay, well, we can talk more about this later if you want, but I like properly started indie making kind of halfway through last year, I think, with my first product, KanbanMail, which I don't know if you're familiar with Kanban, but it's basically a board with columns like Trello. That's a Kanban board. So it's basically like Trello, but for your emails. So you can see which emails need doing when, and like it's more visual because I don't know. I often think quite visually, so like it's good for me like that. And I've also made a few other products. I made something called Make.Rocks, which is a profile for makers in the 24-hour startup challenge.
And you won it. You won $1,000. You won the 24-hour startup challenge, which was insane.
Yeah, oh yeah, I won it.
Yeah, it was crazy.
Which was nice. I think that's definitely the most awards I've ever won for one product. Two. Yeah. Also, Code the Web. I'll get into that more later.
No, definitely, yeah.
Probably, or if we want. We'll see. But that's basically just a blog where I write tutorials, like to help beginners learn web development. Because I find that lots of web development tutorials on like MDN and stuff, they use all this complicated language. And if you've like just learned what HTML and CSS is, then you know you're gonna have no idea about this stuff.
Absolutely.
And I feel like lots of tutorials actually include all these, you know, big fancy terms just to kind of sound like real tutorials.
It's crazy. Like all these beginner tutorials try to teach you about Webpack.
Tutorial. The point is, I wanna teach you. So let's just get all the other stuff out of the way and do that. And then also make a log menu bar. I made that in like a week for fun because it was something I needed. And yeah,
Well, you've had quite a
I
trajectory.
can't see.
That's insane. You are literally. Oh shit! There's a delay.
Oh wait, there we go. I can hear you again. Cool.
Yeah, the audio kind of keeps cutting out, but okay. So you are literally 15 years old. You've made a crap ton of products. Holy crap! Dinuka on Slack. He's always like, "I want my son to be a bullywush." It's my favorite quote from the Maker's Kitchen. So let's talk a little bit more about your product, since you've had a crazy ass trajectory. I mean, winning the 24-hour startup challenge, $1,000, all that stuff. Man, talk to me a little more about that. Talk to me about KanbanMail and how it began and what led you to create it in general. Give me an overview about that.
You mean like KanbanMail specifically, or just kind of getting into indie making?
Huh?
Like KanbanMail specifically, or just kind of getting into indie making in general?
Well, indie making in general, yeah, sure. I mean, I'm not really sure if KanbanMail was KanbanMail your first product, or was it like
It's debatable.
debatable?
So I made Code the Web in I think October 2017. That's when I started it. So like if you count that as a product, then it sort of all started then. And even if you don't count it as a product, that's kind of how I got into indie making. So I think what happened is I used to hang out quite often in this Slack community called DevChat, which had like thousands of basically just all these different developers. And I was talking, like one day I think we were having a discussion about personal blogs or something. And this dude recommended a blogging email course. So I was like, okay, sure, I'll sign up. And then I just kind of forgot about it until like the emails started like popping up in my inbox. And then I was like, oh yeah, there's this thing. So I kind of just read through them. And like at the end of each email, there was kind of like an action step. And I looked at them and I'm like, okay, they're actually not that hard, you know? So like I might as well try to do this. So then I basically just like pushed out a ton of content. And I think in maybe November or late October or something, I went sort of viral-ish on Reddit. Like I posted.
Really? How so? This is the part of bullywush I don't know about. What?
It's not super viral. I think I only got a few thousand visitors. But at the time, I'd never got more than like 10 visitors in one day. So I mean, so yeah, I posted, I think, a list of. I just finished writing some HTML tutorials, and I posted a link to like a list of them on Reddit. And I think it got like 1,300 upvotes or something.
That's pretty
nice.
Damn! Wow, a lot of people try their whole lifetimes to get 1,000 votes on Reddit. That's crazy. That's awesome. Did you get a lot of hits from that, or?
I think it was probably like okay, over the course of a week, maybe it was 4,000 or 5,000 or something.
It's pretty.
So definitely
pretty
not as
good.
many as from Hacker News. But like it was still kind of crazy, just like seeing thousands of people on my site.
Yeah.
And then I think again I got like less successful, but I got like 700 upvotes or something for post on flex boxes. But yeah, so basically that gave me lots of motivation to keep going. So yeah, I kept like pumping stuff out. And then obviously after the big spike, and it was like traffic was going down and down, which is kind of, you know, natural. But I was feeling a bit sad about that. So I was kind of looking how to get more traffic. And I think that's when I kind of discovered Product Hunt and how I discovered like indie hackers and all those sorts of sites and kind of the maker community. So then I think in April or something, I launched the Code the Web newsletter on Product Hunt just to kind of test it out, see how this whole thing works. So obviously around that time, I kind of got more active sort of in the maker community, not entirely. But yeah, then it kind of overlaps with KanbanMail really, because I think I had that idea during mid 2017, so actually before I started Code the Web. and then I think I started working on it kind of in December 2017. It was the school holidays, and I spent like a week just sitting on the computer, trying to build this whole thing and trying to work out how the hell React works.
Oh wow, you started out with React. Okay.
Yeah.
Uh-oh. No.
So I kind of, I think, yeah, so then kind of by the end of the school holidays, I'd kind of, like, not really given up, but temporarily paused that. And then, I think it was maybe June or something, I was looking on Product Hunt one day, and I saw Vue Native, and I think the whole reason that I'd actually wanted to learn React in the first place was because I'd heard about React Native, and I was like, oh cool, then I can make mobile apps and stuff. So I was like, okay, well, I didn't really like React that much, and there's a Vue Native, so I might as well try learning Vue. So I like searched up the documentation, and I like made a demo in my browser. I think it was, actually, this is a very small funny story, but it was the night I was meant to be submitting some assignment, but instead I was like mucking around in Vue.js.
Oh,
so
wow.
I ended up making a massive countdown of like until I needed to submit my assignment as my like demo. But yeah, so I was like, this is really cool. I think it'd be...
Brief intermission for the viewers. Don't try this at home. It's a bad idea. Yeah.
But yeah, so I kind of just did an experiment with like an ordered list with like 3 email titles, just like typed in and seeing how it worked. Then I was like, okay, this is kind of like good, because, you know, Vue seems kind of more like normal HTML. And also it kind of reminded me of Jekyll, because like there are similarities. That's what I use for Code the Web. So then I was like, oh, okay, I'll keep working on KanbanMail. So then I kind of just ended up converting it all to Vue, and then I was kind of working on it for the next 2 months and like getting more into the indie maker community. And then I think I launched it in like, well, I like released the first beta version in late July, and I think I announced it in early July.
So, KanbanMail was more like a learning project, like a natural progression than an actual solid product you like set out to make, perhaps to solve a problem, or was it just maybe a middle ground between learning and I want to solve this problem in a product I want to sell eventually?
So I think it was more about solving a problem, because like in 2017 I thought, wow, this would be amazing if I could like just have a Kanban board, you know, for my emails. So I think like the bit about Vue and stuff, that was kind of just more what kind of got me back into it. That, because, you know, I'd like kind of paused it for a while, and that kind of sparked me getting back into it, and then I released it and stuff. But it was definitely, it wasn't, well, I mean, it was sort of to learn stuff, but it was meant to be like a proper thing, solving a problem. Because I'd been reading all like these marketing posts and like about like growth hacks and weird stuff. But you know, they were all about like products, and I mean, like Code the Web is kind of a product, but it's not like a product where, you know, like you sell it to the customer and they pay you money and then boom, you know? So one of my goals for 2018 was actually to launch a proper product. So that was KanbanMail, basically.
Well, and you did pretty well. I mean, it ranked super high on HN even before you launched. So for those who don't know, Bully he didn't actually even launch yet, and he was already on the front page of Hacker News. That's how insanely successful KanbanMail was, and still is. And then he launched on Product Hunt, and he took over. Tell me more about this whole launch strategy and how this all happened, and the Hacker News surprise and the Product Hunt launch. Tell me more about it. I really want to like.
Okay. So basically, I was kind of in Maker's Kitchen and stuff, and I was telling everyone about how cool KanbanMail would be and stuff, and lots of people were like, oh, I want to try it out and stuff, and you know, so I was thinking of basically releasing like a kind of small beta version, so I could share it with like Danuka and you and maybe a few other people, Mubarak and some others. and I think I had an email list, like a sort of email list, where I posted it in like one Telegram group or something, and it had like 17 people on it. So I basically sent it to them, and I was like, "Hey, you can use the very early beta now." It was literally just a proof of concept. It was literally just so I could, show you, okay, look, you can drag the emails and stuff. Like, you couldn't even send emails, you couldn't reply to emails, you couldn't do a ton of stuff.
Oh wow.
So I think I launched that on, like, I don't remember the day, but within, and I think I also posted it on Product Hunt Makers, and within, I think, yeah, less than 12 hours, somebody had seen it on Product Hunt Makers, and they were like, "Oh, this is cool." So then they decided to just post it on Hacker News.
Oh wow.
And then it kind of blew up. So then I woke up with all these notifications, like, "Congrats on #1 on Hacker News," and I'm like, "What?"
Oh
And
yeah,
then I had
I
a
was
look, and
I
then
was part of that notification squad. I remember the moment. I was having lunch at my grandmother's house or something, and suddenly I was bored. I was checking my phone. I opened Hacker News, just as a random app I want to open, right? I scroll and I see KanbanMail. I'm like, wait, what? What? Yeah, and then we all start posting it on Slack. We all went crazy. It was awesome.
yeah, that was super fun. Um, so don't ask me for launch tips on how to launch on Hacker News, because I have no idea. I didn't even post it,
It
right?
just
I just
happened.
like,
It just happened.
yeah, but I mean, it's not like they used, advanced, super hacky title techniques or anything. It was literally like show HN Kanban for email. Like, it was
Yeah.
so good.
It
That
was
was
super
it.
simple, and I think
Yeah.
that's this is kind of more like an off remark, just something I want to say on the side. I think that's actually one of the best, and debate me on this. I think that's one of the best strategies for Hacker News. Just be genuine. Like
Yeah,
just
I think so.
go and show something off and let people handle it as they will. Don't try to force it too much.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah, I think basically people don't like. Okay, well, basically, you see like a ton of big companies, and they're super successful. So like you're like, oh, I want to be like Amazon, right? And Amazon appears like a big company, and they don't say like, hey, what's up? Like, I'm Amazon. So I should try and appear like some big fancy company thing. Um, but I think that's actually wrong. Um, I think like the big companies do that. That's not why they're successful. I don't think. I think that's just something that comes with being a super huge successful company. Is that you can't have enough customer support people, and you've got the media on your back, and you can't just do that. But I think that people actually prefer that.
Yeah,
Even if it
absolutely.
doesn't feel like it, because if you look at all the successful companies, they're not doing that. So it's kind of rigged in a way there, where you kind of think that you're meant to act all official.
Yeah, exactly. And that's a mistake a lot of people make, and it's something that we've talked about a lot. That being genuine online is the best way to attract. Uh, it's the best marketing you can possibly do online, in a way. I mean, a lot of VC backed startups, a lot of actual even indie makers, independent makers who haven't really realized it yet. They start out by just acting huge. Like, I
Yeah.
remember back in the day, and we all did this. We gotta admit, we all did this. In our products, we would like talk in third person and stuff, and be like, "Oh, we have identified the cause of the problem. We have all fixed the bug," or something like that, right? And it was just one guy on their basement just typing out code like, "Oh, shoot," acting like a $1 billion company, and that's what I did. That's probably what most indie makers did. But then you kind of slowly realize the best way to market is literally just be genuine, be human. Uh, what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I completely agree with you. Something that I often kind of think about. I don't know if I say it. I might say it. Is the best type of marketing is not marketing, right? Like, um, anything that appears to be marketing is bad marketing, you know? um, like, good marketing is just kind of, you know, being yourself and getting people hyped. Because, I don't know, like, if you just see some weird statement from some big company, like, that doesn't um,
Resonate with you.
That doesn't emotionally connect with you.
Yeah,
You know?
it's not relatable at all. That's I think that's
Yeah.
the thing. It's not relatable, and that kind of like alienates people in a way.
Yeah, and I think also kind of if you've got like this really official marketing-y thing, also in a way you kind of assume, well, I sort of sometimes assume that their product isn't good enough, you know? Like it's not good enough for them to be able to just say, Kanban for email, get like does like you know to number one on Hacker News, you know? Like I mean that okay, well that's a bit extreme. But I feel like if I see some company doing like shady marketing tactics and sending me, you know, cold DMs and saying, thank you for checking this out. Would you like a whatever? I kind of just get the feeling that, you know, their product isn't good enough for me to just be like, okay, here's a cool product. I click buy. It's a good product. Yay. And I think once you get, like, people don't like all the fluff stuff, you know? They, like, because ultimately it's just about delivering value to the customer and sending a bunch of spammy DMs and, like,
Yeah, I
using
mean,
language and stuff. Like, that doesn't help anyone, you know?
yeah, I think a prime example of this is, you know, all the people that have launched in Product Hunt ever, we always get a DM afterwards from some guy or some company just trying to pitch you something like, "Hi, Sergio, I noticed your product on X page," and trying to be human, but you just know it's so automated. And
Yeah.
hi, Sergio, we noticed your product on the Product Hunt homepage. Oh my God, it looks amazing. Please click buy. You know what?
It's even funnier when you launch multiple products that come near the top. So then you get like multiple DMs from the same person, and you can just see the exact same text but with the different product titles, like one after the other.
Yeah, and it's so. Actually, on the chat right now, I think Kerr sent the exact copy paste of a message that I received, like right when I launched MakerLog. It's absolutely crazy, and it's bad marketing because the thing about Product Hunt is that makers know each other. Everybody knows each other, and everybody knows that we're getting the same message, so everybody collectively ignores it. It's kind of like sad, but back on point. the I think you made a great point that the best marketing is the one that resonates with you emotionally and doesn't look fake, doesn't look forced, doesn't look enterprise. And another great way of marketing that doesn't seem like marketing, in my opinion, I mean, it doesn't really seem like marketing, but in a way, it kind of makes you relate to this product, is also a very big uh, principle of the maker community, which is transparency.
Yeah.
It contributes so much to the overall product to say have an open stats page, and people can see that, hey, this isn't a shady black box company that I know nothing about, right? I know something about this company, and they're cool. They're literally sharing their stats with me. This is cool. What are your thoughts on transparency in general and how makers just love it so much? Because I don't know. Just go ahead. What are your thoughts on it?
Okay. So I think it's well, first of all, like it builds a lot of trust. Because that's the other thing is while within the maker community, like kind of small companies can be you know, a huge advantage. But I suppose sometimes outside of that, if you see like some tiny e-commerce store with like a credit card like input. And,
Oh wow.
like you're not gonna trust them, right?
A Stripe input just right in the middle of the page.
Not like that, but just some random like WordPress blog selling, I don't know, like microwaves or something.
Microwaves.
Like you're not gonna trust them, right? Because they're small, you know. Like you're more likely to buy it from, I don't know, like eBay or Amazon or something, because you know that there's kind of like protection ish. Um, and you kind of tend to trust them more. So I think, to be like, to some extent, without transparency, small businesses are actually worse off.
Absolutely.
But when you make things transparent and they can see everything that's going on. Like on KanbanMail, you can see what I was working on yesterday, right? So if you're a paying customer, you can be like, oh cool, today Ethan's working on the autocomplete thing in the composer or whatever. And I think then they like really trust you. Like you don't. That's the thing, is I think like makers probably don't tell everyone everything that's going on. I'm sure there's some stuff that people hide.
Absolutely. There's always
Yeah,
a degree of things you want to keep, perhaps for competitive advantage or just generally not wanting to talk about it. But
yeah,
one of the key principles of makers is that we try to make everything as transparent as possible, which is something very, very interesting. I mean, if I go to your something very cool that I find about the maker community is that if I go to your Camden Mail page right now, I can see how much you're making. That's something nobody does unless you're like a public company like Amazon or something. But nobody does that kind of stuff. And as you say, it builds such trust in that these people, you know, they're not shady. It's just one guy building something he's really passionate about. Uh, Transparency is so great.
yeah. I think that's the other thing is if you see kind of a big company or whatever, you're like, okay, they might be a cool company or whatever. I might really like their product. But ultimately, in like 90% of companies, you're like, okay, they're motivated by money. Like ultimately, they just kind of want your money in return for something, you know? Um, Whereas, I mean, indie makers, like, obviously it's a business, so you're trying to make money. But I think also transparency kind of helps customers see that it's not all about, just trying to spam everyone and like get as much money as possible, you know? Like, you can kind of see that a maker is passionate about their product. And I think if you can see a product where the people making it, like obviously they're selling it or whatever, but they're really passionate about it, I think people are more likely are more likely to want to buy, and are also more likely to kind of feel a connection to like your brand or your product. Yeah,
Yeah,
and they can see
exactly.
like you're putting all the hard work and love and like all that stuff into it. You
And
know?
something very cool is that because number one, it helps the maker, and number two, it helps the user. It's a win-win for everybody, which is something these big companies don't do. Um,
Yeah.
it's such a big part of the process of being transparent and creating a product. What are your thoughts on feedback? How do you handle feedback? How does it improve and help improve your product? And how does it make and build user trust for Camden Mail?
Well, I think feedback is really important, and I think users are really amazed when you kind of actually take their feedback and stick it into your product. Because if you send a message to Google being like, "Hey, can you let me change my Gmail address?" They'll be like,
No.
"Oh, we'll put it on." Well, okay, they'll probably be like, "No," but even if they're like, "Yes," they'll be like, "Oh, we'll put it on our like 20-year roadmap," you know. Whereas if it was just to an indie maker, they'd be like, "Oh, sure, I've just like tweaked it in Stripe. There you go, done." Right?
No, you
Um,
send an email to Google support, and the first reply you get, "Hi, your ticket number is 1,025,000." Like, just what? And that's something that
yeah.
doesn't happen with indie
Um,
makers.
Yeah, actually, probably about half of my paying customers, I basically talked to via email before they ended up subscribing. and lots of them kind of had feature requests. So I can just tell you right now that if you want to get a new paying customer and they send you an email saying, "Hey, can you put this feature in?" and then you kind of do it, and 3 hours later you send a reply saying, "Hey, I added the feature," like that's gonna leave a good impression, you know.
Absolutely.
And they're gonna be like, "Oh wow, that's really cool," and then hopefully, you know, they'll sign up. So I think like implementing feedback really fast can make a good impression. One example of this actually is the GIF picker in KanbanMail. That was kind of just a really random thing to put in there. Like when you send an email, there's a Jiffy thing, like on Twitter,
Yeah.
where you use a GIF. So obviously that adds pretty much like no organizational value to the person using it. But there was some like conversation on Twitter about GIFs in emails or something, and they were like, I was like, maybe I should implement this in KanbanMail, and they're like, yeah, you should. So then I implemented it, not necessarily because it's going to make the users so much more productive, but because then people will be like, oh, KanbanMail's kind of the cool, trendy brand that just adds all these cool things.
Exactly.
You know?
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was an investment, not about helping the user necessarily, although it might, but more just about kind of building that image of you know like that can-do
yeah.
attitude.
It shows that you care about the product and you care about your customers, which also builds on the later topic we did on trust, right? But as you said, it helps conversions. It helps sales because you've actually managed to onboard users and onboard potential customers by, you know, adding a little feature that they need, or just generally being responsive to their feedback. And that also has a very nice effect in which word of mouth takes over, and people go to their friends and they're like, hey, KanbanMail's cool because he added a GIF picker like a day ago, and that's amazing. Send me a cat GIF or something. And it has that effect. Plus, then again, it helps build an improved and much better product. Now, there's something I also want to talk about, different to all this, but let's talk a little about the 24-hour startup challenge, because this is something I really want to talk about. All right, so number one, I have one question. And this is the biggest, the most pressing issue for me, the most pressing question, something I've been wanting to ask. How did it feel to get that tweet? the freaking 24-hour startup tweet that said, you win, you won this thing.
Well, it actually all happened while I was sleeping, which I'm kind of sad that I missed the whole suspense thing, but I'm also kind of glad because they spent like half an hour counting down until like,
oh yeah,
number one, or you're not in there at all and stuff.
Oh dude, yes, so, you know, I remember. Holy crap, yes. I totally remember that countdown was that was brutal. That was brutal. But we were all in the Maker's Kitchen rooting for you. You probably now that I remember fully, yeah, you probably woke up to like 1,000 notifications on Twitter and Slack from us just being like, "Yo, Ethan, you won! You won!" Dude, it was crazy.
I remember getting a caps lock message from you in Telegram being like, "Bro, wakey, wakey."
Bro, wakey, wakey, you won, you won.
So yeah, basically, actually, I think Armin told me it was gonna be, basically, I think, 1 hour after I got to school. And Telegram and Twitter are blocked at school. So I was like, no, I'm not gonna find out. And then he actually trolled me the night before. He was like, you know, I could tell you now if you'd won. And I was like, really? And he's like, I could, but I'm not going to.
Oh, wow. Wow, Armin. You are on the record of being a bad person right now. Wow.
But yeah, so they ended up announcing it like 6 hours early or something. So I wasn't expecting to get anything when I woke up, but I kind of checked anyway. And then I get this so like all the notification, like my phone starts buzzing like crazy when I connect it to the internet and just like. Zzz.
I can't imagine that. Did your
And
phone
then, like,
crash? Did your phone just crash? Did it just die?
No, it didn't crash. But kind of funnily enough, the most recent notification was a DM from Pat on Twitter saying, "Hey, where do I send the prize money?" I just told him,
Yeah, I remember that.
Where do I send the prize money?
The first notification you read on your phone, where do I send the prize?
So I was like, oh, that's cool. So then I kind of checked Twitter and I like to see what place I was, and so I was super cool that I got a place. But I was like, okay, what place am I? So then I kind of scrolled down and then I was like, wait, what? Number one? And then, yeah, so that was pretty cool. And then there were all these people saying congrats. And then there were like 40 people, and I was meant to get ready for school, so I didn't say thanks to all of them. I just did one tweet saying thanks everyone who said thanks, because I could do another whole 24-hour stream just saying thanks to all of you. So
Ethan, shame on you. All those poor people waiting for the DMs. Damn.
No, I think I might have got back to them like 2 days later and stuff when I finally finished catching up all the notifications. But
All right. So you go on the record as you actually replied.
yeah, I think I did reply to most of them eventually. So yeah, that was pretty cool, and I was shocked. I was like, what? And then it was fun reading through all like the message history in like Slack and Telegram. It was like a massive headhunt. Like, where is Ethan? Is he at school? No, I don't think he's at school. Or maybe he is. No, I think he said he was sleeping.
Oh, dude, we were completely flooding that chat. We were on Maker's Kitchen. I'm pretty sure. You know how Slack has like a 10,000 message limit?
Uh-huh.
We probably hit that limit like in that day alone. It's like, wow. Anyways, expanding further on like your 24-hour startup victory, there's something I'm also wondering. How did your family react to like you telling them, "Hey, I just won $1,000"?
Well, yeah, they were pretty excited. Yeah. I was like, yeah, so I think after I woke up, my dad woke up, and I'm like, because, yeah, he, like, obviously knew about it. It's not like I did a whole 24-hour stream without any
Without him
parents
knowing.
or brother or whatever noticing. But yeah, so I was like, oh, I won, and he's like, really? And I'm like, yeah. And then, yeah, he was excited too, and my mum, when she woke up, yeah, and my brother. I think they were all excited, yeah.
Well, that's pretty cool. Are they like, how do I make this question? Are they like super supportive in the process? Do you talk to them a lot about your maker things? Because this is more like a relative young person, because I'm like 18 to 15 person talking question. In my case, I don't talk to them much, and I mean I do mostly to my dad, but I'm wondering how that dynamic is for you. Like, do you talk to them a lot about your process, indie making? How do they support you? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, so they're actually really supportive, which is nice. Yeah, they tell me to get to bed, but that's probably a fair point.
Oh, no, that doesn't work for indie makers. For young indie makers, all of us, we all know in the chat, it doesn't work. We don't go to sleep ever.
I actually haven't been going to bed that far past 12 lately, so that's good. But yeah, they're super supportive. It's actually kind of funny because they check my Maker.rocks profile.
Oh, wow.
To see what I've been doing on MakerLog.
That's pretty cool that your parents check your MakerLog account to know what you're doing. And they're like, oh, when they want to call you for chores and they just check your MakerLog and you're like, in progress, making offline support. Like, and they're like, oh no, never mind.
No, I do like talk to them and stuff, but you know, like at dinner or whatever, if I've spent the whole day like working on KanbanMail, then like I can't even remember like all the stuff I've like done that day. So they're like, what did you do? And like, I'll say some stuff, but then I kind of like forget the rest because
Oh
I've been
wow.
doing so much stuff that day. So yeah,
Indie maker's
and then like
dilemma. We're too productive.
then they'll randomly be like, oh yeah, by the way, you reached 800 downloads on Megalog menu bar. And I'm like, oh really? And then like,
Oh,
yeah.
dude, they keep you updated on stats. That's fire. They come up to you like, hey, nice. Nice.
Yeah.
Um. Anyways, moving on from that. After the win, after you won Maker.rocks, and where have you taken it? Like, what have you done afterwards, in terms of features, in terms of marketing, and what do you plan to do with it eventually in the long run?
Okay. So yeah. Basically. Well, we weren't allowed to edit it for a week. And there was all this stuff that I'd wanted to add, but I hadn't really got time yet. So after that, I just kind of added a ton of stuff that I hadn't got around to. And since then, I haven't worked on it a whole lot. And the reason for that is I felt kind of in the few weeks after the Maker.rocks, like after the 24-hour startup challenge and everything, I was finding it kind of hard to focus on KanbanMail. Like I felt, like there's all like my old code that I wrote back in June, and then there's like this exciting new code which I won $1,000 for.
Oh yeah.
But I kind of had to keep reminding myself that like KanbanMail is ultimately like I don't see my future being like working full time on Maker.rocks. Was like I'm not sure what I'll do, but like KanbanMail, if I was like at the moment, if I was gonna have a full-time product, it would be KanbanMail, right? And also that's the only one that's making revenue at the moment. I was actually thinking of adding monetization to Maker.rocks, but I haven't really been able to find a feature set that people would pay for, because like again, like selling to makers is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, like lots of makers can code, some can't, but so they'll like make a Maker.rocks profile and stuff and link to it and really like it. But when it's like, okay, do you want to just like pay the price of a coffee to like host it on your own domain or whatever? They're like, no, I'm gonna code my own site, and then done. Like, so I think like selling to makers is very hard. So I haven't added any monetization stuff yet, but I do plan to eventually. I don't know when I'm gonna do this, because as I said before, like Maker.rocks sort of can sometimes distract me from KanbanMail a bit. But I think I need to, like, I'm basically gonna give everything an overhaul. So at the moment there are kind of profiles, but I'm gonna do cool stuff like I'm gonna have tabs. So there'll be like a stats tab and like different. So there'll be like one tab with like all these graphs, and then maybe a tab with like all the Twitter posts, and then because at the moment I basically just have a 2-column layout. But ultimately that can't, like when I add all these more advanced stats and stuff, like that can't really support that, right?
Yeah.
So I'm gonna do that sometime. But for the moment, it's not a huge focus. Just because I feel like at the moment the time invested into KanbanMail is probably more effective. But yeah, I do plan to eventually kind of give it an overhaul, and yeah.
So something I found very interesting about what you just expressed is that with Maker.rocks you were facing the shiny new thing dilemma. How did you eventually cope with that like rough period of not wanting to work on KanbanMail because you saw it and you were like, oh. How did you eventually like move on and start working on KanbanMail again and regain that passion that like dipped a little?
Yeah. So I think like right after like the 24-hour startup challenge, like it was all like super excitement and stuff. And then after kind of like a few weeks, I kind of had to remind myself, okay, you've got to like get back to work, all right?
Yeah.
Stop checking Twitter every 2 minutes. But yeah, so I think like really it was just a matter of thinking, okay, like I'm really not spending enough time on KanbanMail, and if I continue like this for the next like 5 months, like it's probably gonna die, right? And I feel like um, I still kind of felt passionate about KanbanMail, but I don't know. I didn't really like some of the excitement of working on KanbanMail had gone. So I think basically the way I regained that really was just by kind of thinking, okay, so for a few weeks I just like won't work on Make It or Rocks, and I'll just kind of see what happens, and kind of just in a sort of like in a way forcing myself um, to like to keep adding like to keep working on the KanbanMail code, right? Because I feel like the best way to how do I say this? Like the best way to keep motivated is kind of just to keep doing things. Like for example, if you're kind of getting like really tired of working on your projects, like don't kind of like I don't think the best thing is to stop for a week and just like chill and then come back to it. I think what's better is kind of just doing a small thing for it every day, and then kind of just spending the rest of the time to like think about it or whatever. Because then you kind of still have the motivation, and like you're still familiar with like the feeling of doing stuff for it. And I think a lot of like to be honest, quite a bit of the excitement for KanbanMail is based on what features I'm working on. So like there are some features, for example, like drafts, where like they're necessary, but like that's boring, right? And then there are kind of exciting features like offline support, where like that's maybe not quite as crucial, but it still like sets you apart quite a lot, and it's something that's really exciting to work on. So I think like it's like don't just kind of work on all the tasks like as you like whichever gets you the most excited. But I think when you are feeling a lack of motivation, one thing can be to kind of just okay, git stash
Git stash all the changes
or,
and move on to something else.
yeah, and just like do whichever feature seems the most exciting.
That's actually a very interesting strategy because sometimes you start working on stuff you don't want to work on, right? And it's boring.
Yeah.
You really don't want to do this. You don't want to have to go through this, right? And I never really thought of that. That's actually a very interesting strategy. Just git stash everything you've done and work on something interesting until you regain that motivation. It's actually very interesting. And by the way, there's something I want to say real quick. A slight moment to congratulate Ethan on finally using separate JS files for KanbanMail.
Still like probably like 80% of my JavaScript is still in the index.html. Probably 90% really. But at least I have 3 files now. And 2 of them actually end with .js. They're not HTML files with it all in like a script tag. So
Bingo. Good work. Good. You know what? People in the chat are clapping. This is a true victory right here. That actually kind of leads me to an interesting point that I wanted to talk about. Code quality. In the indie maker community, there's a huge a dilemma. There's figures that say that code quality doesn't matter. There's just ship that thing. And then there's people who say code quality matters and, take your time with it. Where do you stand on this? Like, do you stand on the middle ground of, do things right and ship fast? Or do you say ship slow and, make sure things work? What are your thoughts on this?
well, that's quite interesting. Because at the moment with offline support, it's given me a really good opportunity to rewrite quite a lot of stuff. So like this is very topical. I'm not sure. I feel like if you have really good quality code at the start, um, like you're not sure where it's gonna go, right?
Yeah.
So like if you use all like these fancy object-oriented things and everything, like for your first two features, like you don't really know what like how your code's gonna take shape, right? Um, but if you have kind of super messy code and stuff, then even though it can get a bit confusing, you've got like after you've launched your product, you kind of know like you have a vision for your code in a way, um, and you kind of like you know how the things are going to
Yeah, you
interact.
have an idea of where you want to take the code, right? And the
Yeah.
architecture, right? Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm not sure. I think if you do really messy code and everything right from the start, I think like for the first 4 months or whatever, it's gonna be like amazing, you know, and it's gonna be all good and shipping fast. But then, 10 months later or whatever, it's probably gonna come back to hurt you.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And not really in like getting hacked or anything like that necessarily. Like probably then it might have a bad effect in terms of bugs, but that kind of depends. But really, it'll it'll crush your motivation in a way.
I think that it's mostly about, yeah, as you say, like finding a sweet spot in which you don't overthink your architecture, right? You don't spend a month thinking, oh wow, so this is gonna work with this and this is gonna connect with this, and you end up overcomplicating everything. I think uh, excess complexity is a bad thing. It's an absolute bad thing. I mean, you don't need. Sorry to the Redux folks out there. You don't need Redux for a to-do app, but it's all about managing and balancing the complexities, as you say. Like, don't go to all in. Don't go spend like a whole month on architecture. Just uh, make something that's maintainable and small and just works, right? Yeah. I,
I think a lot of it's about like in a way psychology, and like because in a way it's about shifting where the boring part is, right? So if you architect it all like from the start and thinking this is going to go here and all that stuff, um, then like I think chances are you'll probably like just lose motivation before you even release it, right?
yeah.
Because that gets boring. So I'm actually just thinking about this now. But I reckon it's probably better to have messy code at the start. Because then like you've launched it, right? Like it's an actual product. I mean, unless you shut it down, if you want to, like there's no going back, right? So then it's like you have the product out there. Now you can do all the boring work, so that then in the future it's not boring. And you can kind of expand stuff and make the version 2 like 10 times better than the version 1, right?
Oh,
And that's kind of what I'm doing right now.
yeah. That's a very interesting point of view. Like, not necess- don't worry too much about architecture. Just ship something and perhaps get validation from the community about, hey, maybe this works. Oh, hey, this is cool. I want to buy it, right? Get validation and then worry about the rest, right?
Yeah, like validation number one. And so yeah, number one, like you don't want to spend years architecting all this nice code that nobody even wants to use. And then the second thing is also just kind of putting it out there, kind of almost holding you accountable to like keep going, right? Because I mean, after like KanbanMail gets number one on Hacker News and gets like 22,000 visitors in one day, like you're not gonna say, oh, I'm kind of getting bored of this, like let's kind of just put it on hold for like another 6 months, right? Like you want to release it, you want to launch it, you can see the real users paying you. Oh my gosh, I want to keep going, right? I mean, obviously there are like the bad days where you really like are feeling completely unmotivated. But I think ultimately, once it's launched, once it's out there, once you've got validation, you're going to almost be forced to keep going in a way. Like your users are holding you accountable.
Um, I have a very personal experience to share about this, and it's regarding my. You probably know about this. My previous, not previous, more like current suspended project, OpSpot, right? So at first it started out super messy. It got validated, right? But then I got that you know that how do I say this, urge to take that really messy, ugly code, right, and rewrite it all in React Redux, React Mobix, right? And overall, I mean, the product was very polished. It's very polished in a way in terms of user experience, but also it does drain you, and it takes away your motivation to work on it, right? Because you if you start off with things like React Redux, right, and you see this monumental task, and you're like, oh, so I have to make 20 more files for 20 reducers and all that stuff, right? So complexity also acts as a demotivating factor in a way. Like, it if you worry too much about architecture, which is my mistake, then you end up forgetting about the things that actually matter. And that's a mistake a lot of creators make, right? That they, and this happens mostly in software engineers, not necessarily people who like learn to code, because software engineers, computer science students, we care too much about architecture and the shiny new thing, but people who learn to code and they just look at it and they want to make it work, right? And that's a very interesting factor about the maker community. Most people are self-taught, right? And have a balance between coding and making, as Sunny just said in the chat. And that's a very important thing, right? Because if you focus too much on architecture, you're gonna focus too little on the actual product, and that kills products right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the thing is you want to put your users first, right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
making it all fancy and split up into heaps of files and object-oriented and using Redux and whatever, like when you're doing that, when you're first making like your product before you've even released it, like that's not putting your users first, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, even if you think it is at the time, that's not helping your users at all, right? So you always need to think about what's best for your users. So at that point, that's not best for your users. But now, like with KanbanMail, I think I mean, I'm not fully rewriting it, but like kind of rewriting some parts to make it much cleaner. That is a worthwhile investment that will benefit my users.
Definitely.
Because that means that I can like add new features for them much more quickly, and that will ultimately benefit them. But doing it right at the start, that doesn't benefit them at all. In
Exactly.
fact,
Yeah.
means they have to wait longer until they can use it, right?
Their user only like they don't care about your stack, essentially.
Yeah.
They just want to see something that works, something that solves a problem for them, and a lot of people lose sight of that.
Yeah. I think also when it comes to what I was saying before about working on features that you're excited to work on, I think like, yes, definitely put what your user, like, definitely put the user first, like definitely kind of work on what they want and stuff. But the thing is, if you're not getting motivation, like if you're feeling really demotivated working on this feature that they really want but is like super boring, then eventually there's going to be no product at all, right? And that is bad for your users. So it's kind of a balance. Like when they say focus on your users, I don't think they necessarily mean directly. They mean like in the long run, what's best for your users. So like maybe working on this exciting feature instead of what they want in the long run will be better for your users because then like it won't shut down. Or maybe rewriting the code to make it all fancy is in the long run better for your users because then you can add like a bunch of cool new features for them that they really want much faster. So I think that's something.
So it's more like treating your technical skills in code. It's more like treating your code as an investment, right?
Yes.
You start small and then you make big investments, and because you know it will eventually possibly have a big payoff. Like, for example, refactoring a large part of your code to because it reduces, say, bug rate by 10x, right? That's a that's a worthwhile investment, right? So it's all about treating your time and code as an investment. I think that's the key takeaway there. And well, guys, it's currently 8 p.m. over here. It's pretty much an hour of podcasting. Sorry it has to come to such an abrupt end, but there is one last thing, and it's viewer questions. All right, so.
Yes.
Okay, so I had a few on Twitter. I don't have Twitter open right now. I'm sorry for the people who asked on Twitter.
I think somebody asked something on Twitter. I forgot what.
They had a question there.
In the chat.
Okay, so I think Sunny asked something. He was like, okay, are you trying to work on KanbanMail full time, or what's your backup plan?
Well, I mean, like, ultimately at the moment, like, I'm at school, so I'm kind of, like, I mean, really, unless I drop out of school, which I'm, like, not gonna do at this stage, like, I'm basically stuck working on it, part-time for the next for the next 2 or 3, I think 3 years, so, like, yeah, I'm not gonna suddenly start working on it full-time anytime soon. But I think, you know, I'd love to have it kind of still going by the time I finish school, and kind of, I mean, like, hopefully making like enough MRR where, like, you know, I can, like, I could choose to go like straight out of school, like, work full-time on it. Like, I don't know which option I'd choose. Because, I mean, to be honest, like, you know, I've never worked in an office. And, like, I don't know, I kind of want to experience that. I'll see. But, like, it would be cool to have, like, to be in a situation, I don't know, like, yeah, like, where I could work on it full-time if that's what I chose to do by the end of school, which is, like, 3 years. So I have 3 years to get it up there.
Another question here is there a petition or something I can pay so we don't stop podcasting right now? Well, Alina, unfortunately there is no petition, although you can start a Kickstarter and no, a change.org petition and just throw money in there. We might be able to continue. Kidding, but we have to leave. But one more question. What are your plans to grow your projects like KanbanMail? Are you focusing on new features right now, or is there a marketing roadmap as well?
Okay, so this is interesting. This is something I really, like, I didn't get time to talk about the whole thing. But this year I was kind of thinking of doing, like, starting to do business-to-business sales. But then I kind of started looking more into, you know, like, all the legal stuff. And, like, to be honest, it's a bit scary, right? Because if it's just someone with their emails, then it's like, okay.
Yes.
But when somebody, like, is kind of all about, like, you know, they're calculating the math, thinking, like, what's the return on investment? Like, how many, like, hours will this bug cause me to lose, which equals to how much revenue, and, you know? So I think it's a much more high pressure, basically. So I think, like, B2B will, like, if I did that, it would increase my MRR a lot. But at the same time, it's much more pressure.
Yeah, enterprise is hard. Enterprise
yeah,
is
so
hard.
what I'm hoping is that I can, like, sometime this year, I can just kind of find a few, like, chilled 3-person companies, you know? Like...
Market mostly to startups?
Hmm?
Marketing mostly to, like, startups and small businesses?
Yeah, like, small businesses. But kind of hopefully tech savvy enough so they're not, like, really, like, worried and, like,
yeah.
Oh, no, like...
So you don't get emails at 3 a.m. asking, hey, how do I click the menu?
But yeah, so that is one plan in terms of marketing. Also, kind of marketing plus features is launching a V2. So, like, even now, KanbanMail is, like, a heap better than it was back when I launched it on Product Hunt. And on the roadmap, I've got lots of things which will probably like doubly improve it, you know? So sometime this year, once I've implemented lots of those, I want to launch a V2. And basically my vision for that is just to like have a really, really overpowered thing that kind of has like everything you could think of, right? And like barely any bugs and kind of just, you know, like solid and has all these powerful features, and hopefully I can launch that and then have like a good conversion rate and then get a ton more people signing up, and like that's the goal. I don't know if it'll happen, but
You can probably
that's
launch on
what I'm.
Product Hunt again. Like just have a nice launch and maybe even double your MRR. That would be cool.
Yeah,
Um,
hopefully.
one more question. Fajar is asking a very important question here. It's a very, very important question. What do you eat to make you focus?
What do I eat? I don't know. Food? Like,
I don't know food. That is the best answer on this podcast yet. I don't know food.
like, like I don't know. It's not like, okay, I'm gonna do a 2-hour coding session. Now let's eat my special JavaScript view development broth. Um,
Oh
with
yeah.
like,
Oh,
I
actually,
don't know.
Sunny said he eats bully goosh.
Okay. Right then.
Okay.
But yeah, I don't like. I don't know. Yeah, I kind of. I don't know. Like, I don't like food. Isn't really something which helps my productivity. I would say, like the number one like non-coding thing that helps my productivity is probably intense music. But not so much food.
I can totally relate to this. Even though I do like my nice bag of Tostitos right next to my desk, so I can get a disease or something from eating too much junk food. I don't know. Um, anyway, another question. Wow, these questions are coming in. All right, can you make a Mac app for KanbanMail?
Oh yeah, that's actually that's an interesting thing. So I think before the launch, I started working on a Mac app. And here's the thing where it's kind of like about what will ultimately pay off. Um, Basically, it was pretty much just an Electron wrapper for the web app. So I actually kind of have that on my computer. Um, but then I started getting into like the security thing. So like it's not easy to hack and stuff. Like that's a big thing. And then also like auto update and stuff. Because like one of my biggest fears, which I'm gonna have to work out with service workers and stuff, which I'm working on now. But one of my biggest fears in a way is when you can, is like when you update the code and it doesn't update everywhere. This is why I'm like a web developer, not like like an iOS developer or anything. Um,
Oh yeah, when people don't like, that's a thing with native. Nobody updates things ever.
yeah. Um, so then I kind of started working on like auto update, like based on Git, and then it kind of got really complicated. And I was kind of like, wait a sec, like maybe two people will download this. So I kind of basically put it on hold. But I do actually have that on my computer, and I think definitely I will launch it sometime before the V2
Yeah.
launch.
Now that you mention it, I actually do remember that you showed me a screenshot of an Electron app. You were actually, yeah, it was on Twitter, I think.
Yeah, I even got like the number of unread emails working in like the badge icon and stuff.
Yeah, it was pretty fire. So, you know what? It may be coming, Kerr. It may be coming.
Yeah.
All right. So, one more question. Well, I keep saying one more question, like it's the last. It's not the last, but
That's fine. Probably go for like another five-ish minutes,
oof.
maybe a bit. Less. I don't know. If
Big
something
oof.
like that. If there are more questions.
Okay, so two more questions. All right, so what metrics do you track in KanbanMail? What stats do you pay attention to mostly?
Well, like I should probably do this more, but like pretty much like the goal. I mean, other than having like happy users and all that stuff, but like from a stats point of view, is kind of just like MRR, right? So that's kind of the main thing, like to judge the success in a way. Because, you know, when people are paying $8 a month for it, that means kind of like they think it's valuable, right?
Yeah.
So in a way, also related to how happy they are. But I mean, I don't really track like churn as a metric. But I wasn't really bothered to set up like a whole automatic cancel the subscription thing. So at the moment, like you click cancel subscription and it like opens up an email to me saying, hey, can you cancel my subscription? So like whenever somebody does cancel a subscription, like it's like not really, but like in a way it's a bit like emotional sort. Like I don't see it and burst out crying. Like
It's a loss. It's a big loss.
Especially in December, that's like 2 months after launch. So like that's kind of where there's a bit of a drop off. Like of all the people, like of some people realizing like, oh maybe I don't need this or whatever, or maybe it's too expensive or whatever. So there was this 1 week where like I think 2 or 3 people cancelled, and it like I was feeling down that week, right? I was like, please hope no one cancels
that's
tomorrow
like
as well. Right?
It's like $16 off your like MRR. That's crazy.
Hmm?
If it's like $8 a month, that's like $16 off your MRR.
Yeah,
It's crazy.
Like luckily, like actually, like a ton of people were still signing up that month. So I think in the end, my MRR only went down like 8 or 6 or something. So yeah, that offset it. But like, and you have to like manually go into Stripe and like next to the bit with their credit card and click, and then go cancel immediately. And like,
Oh wow, that must be emotionally shocking. Like
yeah, like I'm used to it now. But yeah, at first that was a bit like, oh, that sucks.
well, one more question.
Okay, all good.
Okay, so Fajar just asked. Well, I'm not gonna attend this question because you pretty much answered it. But Fajar asked if you're gonna sell to business, which you said yes, essentially.
Yeah.
And this is a very big question somebody asked on Twitter, but I'm gonna go ahead and tackle it. Why did you start developing?
Why, like developing products or just
Yeah.
developing?
Code.
suppose
I think I think the person meant code. Like, why did you start coding?
Okay. Well, I've always liked making things. Like, I mean, even if it's like playing with Lego when I'm like 5 or whatever. Like, I've always really liked making things. And like to some extent, like I like making real things, right? But like, you know, when you're like, I don't know, how old was I? I might have been like 10, 11. When you're an 11-year-old, you can't just like suddenly go and like build a proper house, you know, right? But like with coding, you can build like a proper website that's just as good as like any website, like by Google or by like whoever, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I couldn't just like, I don't know, walk into some paddock with like some, I don't know, poles and kind of build a house or something. But yeah, so I really like creating, and I think coding was like a really good way to like express that in a way. If you know what I mean, because like it's democratized, like anyone can do it.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
basically create like proper stuff. And all you need to do is just kind of like sit at a computer and type some things, and then you know.
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely amazing that if you desire, and you have enough motivation for it, you can literally build Amazon, or you can build Google, or you can build anything you want if you really want it. And there's nothing stopping you. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things about the indie making community, and about the indie making community, that we took advantage of this fact that the tech industry is at its peak right now, that expensive stuff that wasn't available to individuals is now available to everybody. Now everybody can have access to a server, everybody can have a server, a domain, everybody can have all that stuff. And that's absolutely beautiful. I think that's something amazing that will really shape the future in the next few decades as apps and software, as it becomes more and more user centric and less corporation centric.
Yeah.
Well, now it is the time to close. We are almost 13 minutes off schedule. But if it were for me, it could have gone for like 6 hours. You remember that last 6-hour stream? I could have totally done that, but
we can do a part 2 sometime.
We definitely have to like sit down and go and like have a part 2 of the 6-hour marathon. But all in all, thanks for watching, guys. This was the first episode. I am quite new at this. I hope everything was very enjoyable to everybody, and thanks for watching. Socials, well, Bullygoosh at Twitter. Go ahead, maker.rocks, I think at Bullygoosh.
I think it's maker.rock/Ethan.
/Ethan. That's the cool thing about making websites. You can get the best usernames ever. And getmakerlog.com /@Bullygoosh. And I am Sergio. I am twitter.com/Matane. And you can find me on Makerlog as @Sergio. Then again, that username's thing. So thanks for watching, and lights out. Thanks, guys.